Hey there, folks. I just wanted to talk about my two homemade boards. This first one I've shaped roughly on a Rocket Exodus. It's about 27 inches long and it's got a similar shape. And I've hand pressed this or laminated this out of thin plywood from the hardware store and clamped it down, glued it together, cut it out, and that was a fun project in itself. The front bracket is a piece of flat aluminum plate. This one has the major arc front truck on it with big Zig 75s. At the back there is another piece of flat aluminum plate, 10 mil thick, bent to D-wedge, similar to a big dog rear fork or rear bracket. It's a upside down traditional kingpin Paris 129 with the big zigs inside out on that one. That achieves zero turn in that configuration. I'll show you that in a second. When I first cut it out, it was longer than this by about that much. But when I put the brackets on, the lever arm effect was so big that it bent too far down in the middle and it was way too flexy. So shortened it up. It's now about an inch shorter than a real Exodus, and the brackets on the front and the back work great. Contestant number 2 is a former downhill board vault doctor, thick and super cambered and kind of uncomfortable at long distances, but it's really stiff and it supports these long brackets out the front and at the back really well. I originally configured this as a top mount. I had these homemade wedges cut from nylon cutting board, and that worked pretty well with the beer net front truck. Then it was kind of high, so I lowered it by bending a bracket to drop the deck a bit relative to the front truck. It's still not quite as low as it would be if I had cut a notch to make it drop through, like a SDF G-bomb fork. The geometry is about the same, but it just doesn't have the drop through. Now the reason I want to drop through the truck on the front bracket is because you can see it's a bit higher at the front than at the rear. That 0 degree bracket sits nice and low. I could probably do lower if I mounted it to the top of the board, but it'll get in the way of my feet. At the back I've made a 0 degree bracket from, again, another piece of flat plate. And sort of in the same manner as a Don't Trip Delirium, but in reverse. I sort of felt like the Delirium, if you get hits, the kingpin is the only way to resist any bending or breaking, resist any movement. So by putting it this way, the rose joint with the spherical bearing inside helps resist any forces when you hit cracks or rocks or obstacles like that, and it's not relying on just the kingpin to resist those hits. This is just what they call a rose joint or a tie rod end with a spherical bearing in it, 12 mil hole, which almost fits the pivot of the hanger, but had to file that down just a little bit to get it to fit. I've also tapped in a bolt at the end, so it was rattling around in there and making a lot of sort of rattling noises, so that tightens it up and it works really well as a 0 degree hanger. The homemade board is 83 centimeters axle to axle, and the big one is 102 centimeters. Quite long, but It pumps really well and I love it. Next projects, like Paul DeBeer does, I'm going to try putting in spherical bearings into these two hangers. This is a Paris 150 that is now, I cut it down, it's now a Paris 125. That's a round of 150. Might make another zero degree bracket for the shorter board, and putting on one of these RKP trucks. And then I'm going to see if the SDF works better on the big board, and if it does, I might just cut a notch in that bracket. Now all of these brackets come from 10mm aluminum flat plate that for a 30cm piece, it's about $30 on eBay in Australia. And it just came about because parts are so difficult to get here, and the ones you can get are really expensive. And so I decided to try taking it into my own hands and making it myself. And I'm really happy with the results. It's ugly, but you know, who cares?